And chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item H2 is the CARES funding update. I believe, Mr. Parrish, you're going to step us through this.
Yep, Mayor, President, members of the council, as soon as I am approved to have the screen, which I must assume Brent has to give me approval, I'll bring the presentation up. But when we went through the CARES Act implementation back in July and August, we committed to coming before you at this point in time to give you an update, and I'm going to bring that up now, on the status and then any suggested reallocations. I do want to say, though, really are proud of the team's initial response to COVID. As you are aware, before we even understood that CARES funding was an option, the council took important early steps in order to help the local business community and the community overall. And so I just wanted to highlight some of those that were done before we recognized and understood that we'd be reimbursed. That was a real act of leadership on the part of the council, and we did some really good things early on for supporting people and for economic recovery. And then since then, you had approved categorization or funding in 3 areas. And actually, the initial phase 1 approval for CARES funding really recouped some of those early investments that we made and our time in order to respond to the pandemic. And then the residual funding for CARES, which is just over $5 million, we invested in 3 areas: public service impact, support for people, and economic recovery. I'm proud to report that we've made amazing progress in really what becomes 3 months to invest this money in a way that's meaningful for the community. We have a good strategy in place to do our targeted outreach to diverse populations work. We've got proposals from the National League of Cities to invest in this area. We've been partnering with the Diversity Council on outreach. So while the funding meter on the left indicates that money isn't spent, we do have a plan in order to execute on that for the remainder of the month. So I'm confident in our ability to do that and bring some of the work that the Diversity Council, National League of Cities, and some other opportunities are there. You're pretty acquainted with the work on the Conservation Corps, which you previously approved is doing well. Cindy has been doing an amazing job partnering with the Rochester Area Foundation on a program to invest $400,000 in impactful activity that our nonprofit sector can do on behalf of the community. We received, the deadline was late last week, and we are oversubscribed currently in applications there, so those are in the process of being reviewed and distributed, but we really do have a great start in terms of work and investment that can be focused on educational efforts, food security, as well as working on some of our partnerships with diverse populations. I'd also say very successful, thanks to the work of Cindy and our neighbors, is our Neighborhood Artists and Artist Support Program. It's provided meaningful funding for those artists that may not have opportunities to be working at the moment. We have a couple of updates in that space, and we are requesting a reallocation in that area, but significant work. Good things are happening, both with RDA, our neighbors, and Arts for Trails and other groups. And you've seen some of that as we've gone on. Likewise, we'll give you a brief update in a moment on some of the efforts we have for those experiencing homelessness. We've been really fortunate to apply for other funding to support our day center operations to date. So we actually have not had to invest any of our current CARES funding into that. It's really a situation where we've been able to partner with the state on their ESP program, their Emergency Support for People program, and got reimbursement of those activities. Now, in a moment, I'll talk to you a little bit about how we can continue that missional work that's happening in the Silver Lake Station or in another location in terms of how we are evolving, but we'll stay tuned for that. Again, the council also had reappropriated some of the RPU residential assistance programming. We may end up not being fully subscribed there, so that's one to keep an eye on in terms of potential reallocation. But that's really on the residential side. The commercial side is significantly oversubscribed. And then lastly, in partnership with the Neighbors Helping Neighbors team, as well as Joe Ward at the Experience Rochester and the Civic Center. They've been partnering on investing in child care dollars, particularly with the Boys and Girls Club, and I know there's other partnerships that are being explored as well. But that is actually, as of last week, up and running and being utilized for child care in a more distant environment, helping to support our essential workers. The public service impact, as I mentioned, we have, of course, incurred costs. I won't really go through a lot of updating here other than I think the elections is maybe the one to highlight. I know Kelly and team have been doing an amazing job of doing the repositions necessary in order to facilitate a good and safe election. And that's really on track. And, a lot of this really is to help encourage and support our election judges. And then we are also investing in some facility modifications in order to support more distant working situations, as well as just a variety of other miscellaneous items there. So just not a lot more to update there. And then economic recovery, I'm proud to report that we just now had distributed over $225,000 to over 30 businesses through the Keep It Local grant, the second round of that, where a business and a local provider are partnered together in order to help think about the future. We know the COVID has had an impact, but it will have a continued impact in the future. This program is really about helping businesses reposition their operations moving forward. We received over 115 applications, just south of $1 million worth of requests. We were able to give out 225. So really, a lot of strong interest in that program, and fortunate that we were able to invest in that way. I also know in this space, the county's program was undersubscribed. It's my understanding that tomorrow at the county board meeting, that they will be considering some modification of their criteria, hopefully to get some of that additional money that they had allocated. Actually, I believe it was approximately $4 million out to more businesses. So that's a positive sign as well. You do have a request in the recommendations to support a parking validation program. You approved the agreement on the consent agenda. We're asking you to approve the reallocation of funds here from our license grant program, which was a little bit undersubscribed. And this would allow downtown businesses to be providing customers with 3-hour parking vouchers to help with construction, to help with the impact with COVID, to encourage people to come in now and actually through the holiday season. So that's another great partnership that the RDA is taking point on, but really designed to get people shopping. Other highlights in this area, again, the Rochester Public Utility Assistance Program. We have provided them with $750,000. They're in the process of allocating that out, but they very much are in a position to utilize any residual funding we might have. So we have a couple of good programs here. If we have last-minute reallocation needs in this area, between Keep It Local and the RPU program, we really have the opportunity to make sure that the CARES funds are used in a locally relevant way. I want to highlight a few things. In some of our program design, we have really made a strong commitment to making sure that women, minority, veteran-owned businesses have an opportunity. We've set the requirement oftentimes at 20%. But as you can see, in many areas, we've actually exceeded that. So we're excited that we were able to do that. We didn't differentiate amongst the categories here, and I think that's something we would consider in the future. But definitely are happy, consistent with how we currently administer these types of funds, that we were able to make them relevant even at a higher level than what we had thought. Lastly, I already mentioned the Keep It Local program. And then you'll start to see a bunch of murals coming up. One here that you'll see over where the farmers market mural currently is, off of the parking lot for the Civic Center South parking lot. But you'll see these come up both on public and private property. A lot of intentionality put to the murals, the locations, and really in a variety of areas. And equity was a strong consideration with that program. Lastly, I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about the Day Center. The Day Center really has been a success, although it has been a program or a service that we've been providing where we've had to be flexible. So as you recall, we had a lot of conversation about how do we create and accommodate those experiencing homelessness Will they attempt to maintain social distancing? Will they attempt to find opportunities to meet needs? We have a number of our locations during COVID where folks that are experiencing homelessness typically gather have been challenged. That includes the Skyways, the library, and so this really provided an opportunity for people to have a place to be socially distant. It provided an opportunity for people to receive services and connect in with providers that are really interested in helping them through their current needs. I want to say, just as it's like awards night here at the City of Rochester, by the way. Shout out to RPU, shout out to the transit team, but also shout out to the library. The Library Association did award the Day Center and 3 of our teammates, Heather Adamson, Ingrid Alvarez, and Kim Dahl, their Above and Beyond Award. And so I think this is a strong message in our team's ability to step up and be responsive. And so appreciate our teammates there that really have committed to the Day Center. As you know, we were in the Mayo Civic Center. They're transitioning back to more normal operations. We have been partnering with the Salvation Army facility. We don't have quite enough space there, and we, that was viewed as more of a temporary arrangement for the times that we're offering. We've been partnering with the Landing to currently provide services during the times the Salvation Army isn't open. We're looking at about 66 people last week received services on a given day. We'd expect that to increase as the weather becomes less favorable. And so what we'd like the council to consider tonight is really allowing the team to continue to explore using the Silver Lake Fire Station as a temporary day center. If you recall, about a year ago at this time, you did authorize that facility to be considered as a warming center. And then the county decided to pivot toward their location. There is a request to the park board to reconsider that tomorrow evening, and then we've been continuing to have conversations with the Landing on how this might work. So I think I covered a lot of the items here, but they're included for your reference. So I want to put forward a few actions for you to consider this evening. This is slightly modified from what is in the current RCA. It was distributed to the council via email earlier in the day. So we're looking to reallocate within the economic support area, reallocate $215,900, which was funds we couldn't use in a license program, to the parking incentive program and to the winter outdoor dining program. Note that the winter outdoor dining program, that's a portion of the funding. Rochester Ready is also having a conversation of some of the funding that's been allocated there, and then they're seeking private investors or private contributors to that as well. This really would allow for Sidewalk Cafe grants to allow additional positioning for the winter months, both in the downtown and throughout the broader community, so it's not a downtown specific program. Secondarily, I just request that any economic recovery funds that are unspent by the end of the month be reallocated to the RPU Business Utility Assistance Program. That would give them between the 1st and the 15th to distribute any remaining funding that's out there. And as you know, the 15th is our deadline. Otherwise, the funding then gets transferred to the county. 3rd, 4th, and 5th, we'd request that $50,473 be reallocated from the Residential Utility Assistance Program to Neighborhood Arts. Neighborhood Arts is currently oversubscribed. The Utility Assistance is currently undersubscribed, given the amount of resources that are available in that area. And then we'd also request that, in a broader sense, we're going to have a lot of last-minute reconciliations that need to be done. So we would just request that any support for people funds or any of the other public service funds that are projected to be unspent by October 30th, that you allow the staff the opportunity to reallocate those within their respective categories. I think we understand that the council wants to maintain the balance within those categories, but we may need to do some last-minute reconciliations in order to ensure that the funds are spent in a locally relevant way. And then lastly, we would just request that the council affirm support for transitioning day center operations to the Silver Lake Fire Station. And that would be done utilizing the $400,000 that was allocated to support those experiencing homelessness. With that, I want to thank the council, the community, and all the team that has worked on this because it really has been a great effort. And I do think that we have done this in a way that has been very relevant for Rochester. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the council has.
All right, thank you. So we do have 5 requested items or actions. Questions or comments from council members? Mr. Palmer first.
Mr. Parrish, I just got this today, is that correct?
President, members of the council, you got the majority of this in the packet. The Silver Lake item is today, correct?
Okay. First of all, I mean, I think you guys have done a phenomenally great job. I like the fact that you've been flexible with how we're doing it. You've taken a lot of public input. We've gone back and forth on how to do these programs. It's not been easy. You guys have done a great job on it. I won't support number 5 for one thing. I was told last week that Silver Lake Fire Station was a fire station. It wasn't going to be used for anything else. Last year, the park board voted to do it because they were going to give $800,000 of improvements to their building. We still have the fire department there. We still have COVID there. I didn't know that they didn't have that need anymore. So obviously, I won't support number 5, but I do want to compliment you and your staff. I think you've done a great job and a great service for Rochester, and really a hard. I mean, this has been a hard to put it together and do what it's supposed to be doing and to work with everybody. And I appreciate it, and I thank you.
All right, Mr. Keene.
Yes, for Mr. Parrish, again, I appreciate the effort you guys are going through, and I think what you're trying to do here is set us up so that as we get to the deadlines, we have the right thing, the right approvals in place from council. Before we get to that, I do want to just drill down on a couple things and make sure I understand it. Just, I am surprised the RPU residential program didn't take off the way the commercial one did. Is there any high-level understanding of why that didn't work out as well as we had hoped?
Mayor, President, members of the council, I'd say a couple things. One, this really is a program that's above and beyond the normal emergency assistance program. So you have, through the county and Three Rivers and other organizations that are very focused on very low to moderate income folks. This is really to go above and beyond that for people in that $30,000 to $70,000 income range that might have been impacted through the pandemic. I do know that there's been some more targeted marketing done that may yield some result there, but I really think it's just, we didn't really have a strong sense of, what that additional need might be. So we'll see, but the current projection is that it'd be less.
Okay, and again, I'm good with that. We did these things pretty quickly, trying to bring them up, and I've worked a little bit with RPU. I think there's some crossover across programs, but again, I'm glad we're not leaving it on the table and trying to reassess right now. My other question, just on this parking one, and I want to make sure we're in good standing with this. I understand what we're trying to do, and I want to support it. Is there any method we have as far as making sure these are consumed in the timeframes we are supposed to use them in? And if they're not, are we exposed to any sort of audit that we'd have to return the CARES money?
Yeah, so this is I'll give you sort of a high level response, but there is some maneuvering that has to happen to make this work. We are providing a grant to RDA to administer a parking program. They will then buy vouchers from Reef Parking. And so the timing isn't as relevant,
Okay.
Although we have requested that one phase be done through the end of October. Then they're vouchered and dated, so they can only be used through that period of time. And then at the end of October, they can assess how much parking they would like to purchase after that point for the remainder of the year.
Very good. That's helpful. I just want to make sure we don't get caught with misuse of CARES funds. And it sounds like you guys have worked this through to make sure we're not. So those were my questions, and I'll yield the floor to my peers.
All right, thank you. Before I go to the next speaker, I just want to tag on to that since Mr. Keene brought it up. And I know we approved this earlier under item F8, but I was curious why the program, the expiration date of December 31st, is there some requirement, or it seems like we want to try to encourage parking and use of the vouchers until they're gone. So why wouldn't we put a hard deadline on it?
Yeah, I think you could have gone a variety of different ways with this. We could have just said, well, we'll give you this much to buy parking and you can do with it as you like. I think the focus was really to try to have it targeted, encourage a lot of activity in the time frame in which we're talking about. But and I'll defer to Jason, if there's anything beyond this. But I don't think we necessarily had to. I think it was really an idea of targeting it through the holiday season.
And again, we're gonna, given the climate and everything, I would hope we would encourage people to come downtown and use downtown even once the key holidays are over. So unless there's some legal reason to have it expire December 31st, I would rather that, we use what's allocated until they're expended. But just a comment more than anything. Mr. Lewis, did you have any addition to that?
No, I think that's covered it.
Okay. All right. We'll move on to Mr. Wojcik.
Move approval of the 5 items.
Second, Keen.
All right. We have a motion by Wojcik, second by Keen. Now, comments, Mr. Wojcik?
Yeah, just I want to echo Councilmember Palmer's accolades for the team on just jumping into a project that none of us are necessarily trained for and really doing some exceptional work on it. I did briefly send a text to our communications person just saying, that summary that Aaron provided was really outstanding, and I'm hoping we could just get a standalone clip of that, because I think that's an update a lot of people would be interested in seeing. So maybe the one question I had, and this is, maybe putting a little bit the cart before the horse, but we're actually using the CARES Act to put a tremendous amount of money to really try and drive commerce and opportunity for businesses downtown, because that's an area that's been certainly disproportionately hit. I'm curious if there are any functions of covered in the RDA's annualized budget where potentially some of these funds could perhaps supplant any potential 2021 increases, or if that's something that's pretty explicitly restricted due to the timing. And I guess maybe that question's for Jason.
I'm not sure I follow what the timing.
Yeah, sorry. Really, what I'm wondering is, with the RDA, there's been the special assessment downtown has been called into question by someone that's current hot button topic, and I don't feel that I'm fully understanding that yet. I know we have some more information coming, but I'm curious if some of these RDA functions can potentially be funded with CARES Act dollars, or if the fact that this would be the 2021 budget, that would not be eligible.
Yeah, probably not. CARES Act funds are supposed to be for 2020 budget items only.
That's okay. Just wanted to at least throw that out there. Thank you for the clarification.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Campion.
Yeah, just can staff elaborate a little bit on number 5? I guess I'm feeling a little bit flat-footed on it. Could we just get a little bit more detail on, specifically affirming support can be taken as a positive, or it can be taken as kind of this is a fallback? I'm just kind of trying to understand what the sequence of events is here again.
Mayor, President, members of the council, Councilmember Campion. Yeah, I apologize. I didn't go into depth on that. and it's very fluid. I mean, we were having conversations on this, even up till late Friday afternoon and into today. And we've explored many, many options to address, this need. I would say if you were to affirm support, what we would be working on would look something like this. And happy to have Audrey and Jamie Wilson on our team offer context, because they're really walking with this day to day. But it would look like we would look to make capital improvements in the existing facility to support at least a 6-month use of that while we consider what the long-range options might be there. We do know, as Councilmember Palmer indicated, that there are some capital needs that need to be addressed in the building. We would get as many of those done within the next, till November 15th that we could. We probably could not do the HVAC in that building this year, so that would be, if there's a longer term idea about what wants to happen with the warming center, or excuse me, the day center, we would need to think about, making those HVAC improvements. So funding within the 400,000 would go to two areas. One, whatever initial capital improvements we could get done, that might be bathrooms and showers and some furniture, fixtures, and equipment. And then two, a contract with the landing to provide operations for that for a period of time. And so we would look at that. And then, as you recall, moving forward, we had previously talked about using the extra community development block grant funds partially in this space. But it just puts us in a position to have a longer term conversation about how we want to view the day center. It would get us through the winter, and we'd be thinking about it like that. So, Audrey or Jamie, is there anything else that would be helpful to add for the council?
I think that covers it pretty well for now, Aaron. If there are specific questions, I'm happy to help answer those as well. Thank you.
I agree. This is Audrey.
No, and this is Nick. Thank you. That was what I was looking for.
All right, thank you. Mr. Bilderback.
Yeah, I got a couple questions. Number one, I agree with Councilman Palmer, and I'm not sure, is the fire department leaving that area?
Yeah, so Mayor, President, members of council, I apologize for not addressing that. We have had engagement with both the Parks Department and the Fire Department. The Fire Department is okay to transition out of that space if needed. And so we've had that, and I defer to Audrey, who had the direct conversations. We're understanding that they can go back to their current, the existing stations at this point in time, if needed.
And then I got a logistics question. I'm a little confused. We have them staying overnight across the street from the government center right now. How are they, and when it's 20 below zero, how are they going to get to the day center? Are you expecting them to walk? I mean, to me, this doesn't make sense. You need to figure out a way to transport people as well. If you're going to go from the nighttime shelter and then a mile away or 2 miles away have the warming center, it's great today, but it isn't going to always be like it is today. So I'm curious about the logistics.
Yeah, so Mayor, President, members of council, this is a bit of a conversation we had when we thought about this for the warming center, back about a year ago. One, I would say, that area is served with a transit stop, so there's a potential transit opportunity to that site. Currently, transit is fare free, so we have, that. But if it's not fare free, we'd have to think about what that means. Walking is encouraged. That's also an option, but certainly understanding in certain parts of the year that might not be as conducive. So I think that's really the answer at this point, but we do understand that they're not right next to each other. We did explore the idea with the county, could we utilize the existing warming center space also as a day center? And given the build out of that space currently and the need for social distancing and how far the beds are currently spaced, the thought is that would be an option, given the current furniture arrangement in that space.
Okay.
Is that it? All right. Is there anyone else who would care to make comment? Mr. Palmer.
The lack of transparency on this just is appalling to me. To find out that you're going to move it to a park for a day center, and you're trying to put behaviorally challenged people against park people, and to me that's horrible. And we have the fire department there now. We did it for COVID. Whatever we had to do, to go to the park department and say, I know we strangled you for money, but we're going to give you some updates to this building that we may tear down. We have, I hate to use the word master plan, but we have no master plan for that place. We have no idea what we're going to do with it. So we're going to stick $400,000 into a building for maybe 50 people. We got the landings running it, and the landings thinks it's okay for people to sleep in tents, which I found appalling. There's nothing of this I like whatsoever. The behind the back, non-transparent, not a person knew about this in the public until 4 o'clock today. So obviously, you know where I stand on it, and I find this really appalling that we have no transparency on this issue whatsoever.
All right, Mayor Norton.
Thank you. I just would add my comments to this discussion too. We have been working for a year and a half on a very difficult situation with our homeless population, as are cities all across the country. And I would say congratulations to our staff and to the county for their literally constant dedication to providing safe during COVID and before COVID and after COVID, I have no doubt, safe places and supportive services for people who need it. The ideas that are before you today are not new. They are ideas that this board approved for a night center rather than a day center a year ago. And they were not actualized because other opportunities became available, which I think gave people a little bit of a sigh of relief. But the fact is, we are now faced with another winter. We are faced with a pandemic, and the opportunity to be able to use an unused building for a temporary solution is a wise option. During the winter months, the parks are not used. This has a nonprofit that will be managing it. And I think we should count ourselves lucky that there are people in this community willing to step up and provide service. So we have an empty building. We can utilize it in the winter months and continue to work, as I know all of the people are that have been mentioned here today, to find long-term solutions. And again, I don't want to leave the county out either. They have been working. The pandemic has kind of got in the middle of working the plan that we all paid for and hope to completely fully implement when we are past the pandemic in order to deal with this on a more permanent basis. But I really want to thank the staff. I know they've been working very hard behind the scenes to try to find a solution to the problem we're faced with, which came about pretty quickly, where we do not have a place for a day center any longer. And we know what happens if we can't provide that support, and we know where our homeless population will go for that warmth. So I think this is an excellent stopgap for a long-term solution. So I encourage you to support it, and I thank everybody for their work on this.
Mr. Wojcik.
Appreciate that. I want to speak up a little bit on the, some of the innuendo directed our homeless population and remind folks that our homeless are far, far more likely to be a victim of a crime than to commit a crime. And this is really about the health, welfare, safety, well-being of people. And there are probably some behavioral challenges to be found there, but there's also resources to try and address that. I know that there are some folks who are vehemently opposed to, having the homeless in a certain part of town. And I would just say that if I had a facility available in my ward, I would welcome them with open arms if there was a plan to take care of them there. I don't want to scare people. I don't want to say that we're mixing park users with the homeless, because the homeless are as welcome to use the parks as anyone else is. So I just got a little bit of a sense that there was a little bit weighing down heavily on the impact of having the homeless there. That's not my concern. The transportation issues, that is, we do need to make sure we keep our eye on that for sure. And this isn't a perfect solution, but we don't have a perfect solution. And this is going to help keep people safe and give them a place where they can where they can be. So I am willing to support this.
Mr. Keene.
Yes, I want to share my concerns, like Councilmember Palmer, that I do have concerns about this coming up like at the 11th hour versus it, but I think this is a reflection of where we're at. It is telling too that we're discussing this through the CARES discussion and not a thing about the shelter and our normal business. This is coming up more in an emergency mode. I guess I do want to ask, and I think I know the answer, but I'm afraid I don't. we're having the warming shelter or the day, I shouldn't say the warming, the day center because of COVID. I mean, we do, this isn't a new long-term program that we're going to be running in the city. This is so that people are not congregating, or we're trying to manage the space well for them. Do I have that right?
So, Mayor, President, members of the council, Councilmember Keen, we're funding this within the confines of the emergency response associated with the pandemic. Obviously, as the mayor indicated, this is a very contemporary community conversation. Leading into it, the county had done a lot of great work in terms of developing a community-based strategy that, and we were trying also to, have conversations about, what do folks do during the day, whether in the library or in the skyways. But I would just say this right now is very focused on pandemic response. But I don't want to, be disingenuous and say that there isn't, a larger community conversation that wants to happen with this issue. I'm just saying, like, the specific thing we're bringing forward for you this evening is focused on, getting us through the pandemic. That's where our funding is, and that's where our focus is at the moment.
Very, very good. That's how I understand it. And again, I want to support this because I think it is a community priority. I also want to point out that it is under 1 mile to walk from the current overnight warming shelter to the day center. And I think that's a reasonable expectation, especially when there's public transportation that could also be there. Thanks.
All right, I have Mr. Campy and then Mr. Palmer.
Yeah, I'll just say kind of appreciate staff talking us through some of the details here. It doesn't seem like there's a perfect solution, and unfortunately, as we've all kind of been through some of the master planning efforts and different pieces that have gone on, they oftentimes have to be crafted to reality that is a little bit less ideal. And so I think, Councilmember Wojcik, I think those are great points about, not having a great alternative. And so I think we're looking for something that works, and it sounds like this works. And so I think staff, I appreciate kind of bringing forward a solution instead of just bringing forward a problem. And I'll just leave my comments there.
All right, Mr. Palmer.
Mayor, I'll correct you on a couple things. First of all, people do use the parks in the wintertime. You see them used all the time. That's the reason that we clear the trails. That building is not empty. It's with the firemen that are in there. The fire people are in there. They're in there for COVID. We're going to spend $400,000 on a building that we may tear down. And yes, you were correct, though. It was done behind the scenes. And I'm not trying to scare people, Mr. Wojcik. I have the most empathy for people with behavior problems. And I just don't think we're doing the public just when we do it behind the back and we show up an hour later and going to vote on this. So the transparency on this is just appalling to me again. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Mr. Campion.
Yeah, I just want to call out, not everyone that relies on these facilities has behavioral problems. And, I'm bristling a little bit at the language because I think it's a little bit loose to be talking about and addressing people that are members of our community who are often experiencing temporary homelessness. I think we've repeatedly tried to set up systems that do our level best to help. And in these conditions, in this situation where we're facing a little bit of a headwind with, difficult winter in front of us, I think we're trying to do the best we can. And there's a little bit of fear mongering about we may tear it down. But if we're making these sorts of investments into it and it proves to be functional, I don't think that's true. I think if it proves to be an answer, then we won't do that. So it's just as likely that we make this investment and we stick to it. So I understand there's a little bit of a sore spot. I think I appreciate my colleagues trying to make the best of a situation that probably isn't optimal for anyone.
All right, Mr. Wojcik.
Just a small comment. I appreciate Councilmember Campion's words, and I like to describe homeless by saying 100% of our homeless population is homeless because they don't have a home, and any other assumptions that we make about them are probably not appropriate for a forum like this.
All right, anyone else? We do have a motion on the floor. Any final comments? Otherwise, I'll call a question. All right, and this is for all five
I'm sorry,
action items.
I'm sorry, President Staver?
Yes.
Sorry, just because of the complexity here in the 5 things, can you just restate the motion?
Actually, Mr. Parrish summarized, there's 5 actions requested. The first 2 are on your screen right now, and then the other, there's 3, 4, and 5. That's what the motion
Very good,
entails.
very good.
Okay?
Yes, all right, good. I wanted to see the other 3 up there. That's good. So when you're ready for roll, I am.
All right, thank you. I will go ahead and call the vote. Keen.
Aye.
Wojcik.
Aye.
Campion.
Aye.
Aye.
Palmer.
Nay.
Johnson.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Motion carries 6-1 with Mr. Palmer voting nay. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to our pulled consent items. We have 2.